What's up, guys? Welcome to another playoff prediction video. This time we have another rematch to be talking about. So, first, you have Tampa Bay versus the Toronto Maple Leafs, and now you have the LA Kings versus the Edmonton Oilers. This series went the distance last year. LA surprisingly, pushed Edmonton very far. We thought that the Kings were going to be eliminated within 4 games. That was not the case. Both these teams, since Edmonton won, have both gotten better. Yes, there was the whole Jonathan Quick situation. Yes, he was done 30. I completely understand, but he's very happy as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, and he'll be playing with them heading into the playoffs versus the Winnipeg Jets. But you have Jonas Korpisalo, who's now their new starter, and you have Gavrikov, who they added on defense. In terms of the Edmonton Oilers, they have Matthias Ekholm, who they've added, and they've been on fire ever since they've added him. Also, you have the addition of Jack Campbell, who's their starting goaltender, and Stuart Skinner, who has been one of the most surprising rookies this year. I would say top 3 rookies this year. And I do believe that he'll be the starter heading into the playoffs. But with these two teams arguably being a lot better than they were last year, who wins this series?
Well, I think you got to analyze things in different aspects. So obviously, these two teams are familiar with each other because they played with each other last year, playing against each other last year, right? So they know what they're going to expect from each other, right? And obviously, with Edmonton, there's the big question, and there's always going to be the big question mark of, is this their year, right? And the truth is that Connor McDavid's had a fantastic year. He breaks records every single year, and it seems like this year he keeps just setting career highs, which just doesn't make sense because every year he's just stupid, and this year he was just even more stupid good, which just doesn't make sense. Anyways, obviously for Edmonton, I mean, let's state the obvious here. They're an offensive dynamite, right? McDavid, Draisaitl, Evander Kane, Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. This is a team that is very much built to outscore their opponents and absolutely demolish them, right? Offensively. They had 3 players on their team this season hit over 100 points. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid. Zach Hyman finished with 83 points. And then their next highest point scorer was Darnell Nurse. And that's where the concern is, right? And the reason the concern is there is because Edmonton doesn't have depth, right? They lack a lot of depth. And that is, I think, the biggest problem with the Oilers going into the playoffs is how much of their playoff success is going to be dependent on the top 3, right? McDavid, Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Because in the playoffs, you need depth, right? And as much as you need your big guys, you need your superstar caliber players. And Connor McDavid, we all know how good he is. Draisaitl, we all know how good he is. You still need depth to get through games, right? Because there's going to be games where your star players are going to get shut down. And there's going to be games where, your star players are going to perform. And LA, knowing how good they are defensively and knowing the style that Todd McClellan plays, they're going to give the Oilers a hard time, in my opinion. Right? So the Oilers are going to need their depth. And I look at their bottom 6 and I'm not overly impressed with it. I know they added Bjorkstad at the deadline. Klim Kostin's been a pretty decent addition. Janmark's not really at his best. Warren Fogle isn't really the best. Derek Ryan and Ryan McLeod neither. And I think that if you look at the top 2 lines, that's where Edmonton is going to get their offense from, right? So that's where the concern comes in for the Oilers. If you're LA, the concern for LA, I think, is the fact that they're a young team, right? And I know that people might say, why is that concerning? It's concerning because in the end, right, as much as they played the Oilers last year, there's a lot of these guys that are still very inexperienced, right? Arthur Kaliev, Rasmus Kupari, Carl Grundstrom, and obviously Quinton Byfield. And then on defense, Sean Durzi. Now, I know a lot of these guys played last year, but they're still young. They haven't hit their prime yet. They haven't hit their peak. And LA is built around, Anze Kopitar, on Adrian Kempe, and obviously the obvious one that they acquired last year at the offseason, Kevin Fiala. The thing that I like about LA is they're very well-rounded. They're a team that is built everywhere, right? They're good offensively, they're good defensively. And in net, I mean, Corpusalo can steal a series. We've seen him do it before, right? So I think with LA, they're just more of a complete team. And I think with the Oilers, there's a lot of question marks on defense as well. I know they added Ekholm. He's been a fantastic addition. I think he might be the reason the Oilers go far in the playoffs because he's been an absolute beast for them on the back end. And I think they have a decent decor, a better decor than they did in past years. But I think your big question, Chris, and I think everybody's big question with Edmonton is their goaltending going to keep up? And that was the story last year in the playoffs. And it's a story again this year because, yes, Stuart Skinner's been good, but Stuart Skinner's never been a starter until this year, right? He's never played meaningful games, right? And Jack Campbell, as much as people don't like Jack Campbell and he hasn't had the best season this year, you know, he's got playoff experience. And so I think for Edmonton, it's going to bode well to see, okay, maybe if we start Stuart Skinner game one, see what happens. But if you start going down 2-0 in the series, maybe Edmonton turns to Jack Campbell because the playoff experience is there. And we've seen how good Jack Campbell's been in the playoffs. He's been really good, right? It's not because of him that the Leafs lost the last two playoff series. It's because they just weren't able to put the puck in the net. And that's where I think Edmonton's question mark is going to be is their goaltending going to keep up? And, what type of team are we going to get? Right? It's McDavid's year. I think he's got a career year. I think this is the year Edmonton potentially can go all the way and potentially win it.
Look, I love that Connor McDavid and Draisaitl have over 120 points. McDavid finishes with 153 points,
Yeah,
64 goals, 89 assists, and Draisaitl 52 goals and
just
76
stupid.
assists. So that's fantastic. And both guys surpassed 50 goals easily. Ryan Nugent Hopkins, long overdue that he gets over 100 points. He's been with the Edmonton Oilers for a very long time, and I'm very, very happy for him and his success. But as well as they did in the season, it's time to translate that success
Into the
into
playoffs.
playoff success. So, looking at the top four, point producing players, McDavid, Draisaitl, RNH, and Hyman. You know, you have Nurse, Bouchard, and Ekholm, three defensemen. And
Yeah.
who is your fifth best forward in terms of offensive stats? Nick Bukestad with 29 points. That's kind of concerning in my opinion. And Evander Kane has dealt with a lot of injuries, and I'm hoping that he's healthy and ready to go for the playoffs, and he's not dealing with any minor injuries because that could really hinder his performance. And you'll need a guy like Evander Kane because
Yep.
he's so talented offensively, but he's also a big body and he knows how to get under the skin of his opponents. So I'm
Yep.
hoping that he's 100%. Then you have guys like Yamamoto that's very young, and you have Klim Kostin. Those two guys, I would say it's either make it or break it for them. They could surpass expectations, or they could really be underwhelming. And it's like, okay, guys, like you guys are young, you guys need to prove yourself. It's time to step up because the LA Kings have a lot of young guys that have stepped up and will continue to step up in the playoffs. Now it's up to Edmonton's young guys to also step up as well. Looking at the LA Kings, what I like about their team is that they're very well balanced.
Yeah.
Quinton Byfield finally making the LA Kings doing very well as of late. Philip Dano, such a key player heading into the playoffs. We spoke about him last year, and he was very important in the series against Edmonton, and he will continue to be important this year against the Edmonton Oilers. Kaliev, very underrated. Adrian Kempe as well, very underrated. Victor Arvidsson, very underrated. Just a very underrated team, an overlooked team, in my opinion, in terms of the LA Kings. But looking at their defense, yes, they don't have any flashy names, but like the New York Islanders, very solid. Mikey Anderson, very, very underrated defenseman. Sean Dursey, very underrated. Sean Walker, underrated. Matt Roy, underrated. Gavrikov, I would say he's overrated because of all the buzz surrounding him heading into the trade deadline and the demands in terms of what he was supposed to be traded for. And at the end of the day, I thought it was fair value what he got traded for. And then obviously Drew Doughty. And that's another key factor. Drew Doughty is in this series. He was injured last year.
It's
He will
true.
be
It's
playing.
true. You're right about
He
that.
will be playing this time. So he could
Yeah.
be the X factor in beating the Edmonton Oilers. This is going to be a lot closer than it was last year. And I do believe that it comes down to defense and goaltending once again. And another thing that we were alluding to at the start of this video, depth. Third line and fourth line. Whoever has the best third line and fourth line will win this series because we all know that the Edmonton Oilers have a fantastic top six, but do not think that LA cannot keep up with those guys because Philip Dano knows how to shut down top guys. He's done it in the past when he played for the Montreal Canadiens against the likes of Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Mark Scheifele, and the list goes on. These
But
guys are for real.
yeah, and what's interesting about LA, right? And I gotta say, and you talk about being underrated, and I want to bring up a little bit of some stats. Okay, they finished with 104 points this season. They finished third in the Pacific, 47 wins, 25 losses, 10 overtime losses, ninth in the league in goals forward, 16th in the league in goals against. Now, what's impressive about that is that their goaltending before Corpusalo came in was pretty questionable, right? Jonathan Quick had an 876 in 27 in 31 games with the Kings. Cal Peterson was horrible with an 868, and there was concern about whether LA was even going to make it in because their goaltending was terrible. Then they called up Phoenix Copley, and he started playing some really good hockey, and LA started getting back in the hunt. And then they went to go trade for Eunice Corpusalo, and it's been a blessing in disguise for for them. Sorry. So what's interesting about all that is that for LA, you talk about them being underrated, but they are extremely underrated because they're very well coached. They've got a young team that, in my opinion, although there's inexperience there, they're still very good players, right? And obviously, you forgot to mention one guy, Gabriel Velarde, who's turned his season around, 41 points in 63 games. He has 23 goals. Obviously he's injured right now, but that's going to be a huge help for LA. And like I said, right, in talking about the Oilers before, they lack a lot of depth, and that's something that LA doesn't lack. They've got that with all four lines. All four lines can score on you. And so if you're Edmonton, the concern is going to be here if the LA Kings find a way to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, which, let's be honest, it's a very tough task, but it's not impossible. If they can find a way to shut down McDavid and Draisaitl and minimize the chances that they get and minimize the production that they're able to put up, LA can absolutely win this series. And we talked about the Islanders in Carolina in the previous video, on how that series is going to go. I think this one's going to go back to 7 as well. And the reason I believe that is because it's two teams that are familiar with each other's games, that have been pretty similar in terms of stats in the regular season. But not only that, you know, they're two very good teams. Like, this is not a series where it's like, oh my God, the Oilers are absolutely going to run away with this. This is a series where it's like, honestly, both these teams could win, and both these teams could probably go all the way to the Cup final. That's how I see it. And the truth is that, as much as LA is, I think, the least experienced out of the two teams in terms of the young talent that they have, like you mentioned, Chris, they're a very talented core, right? They have a lot of young guys. And Philip Dano, I mean, look what he did for the Canadians in the playoffs. Look what he did for LA in the playoffs last year in the 7-game series. He's going to be a difference maker. And I think that, we all know how he's played against Connor McDavid and how good he is at keeping an eye on Connor McDavid. So I think it's going to be an interesting series. I'm obviously not going to bet against the Oilers, although I do want to watch every single one of these games because I think it's going to be an insane series. I'm going Edmonton in 7 games, but it could go either way. I think it's going to be an overtime winner in Game 7 that's gonna end this series like it was last year. And yeah,
I'm a fellow Canadian, and it pains me to say this, but I do think goaltending will bite them in the ass. So
really,
I'd have to go with the LA Kings. LA Kings,
really,
people don't know this, but they're 10th in goals. And that's how well balanced they are offensively. And not only that, their power play, fourth in the league, guys. This is not a team to mess around with. In the face-off circle, third best in the league, and that's because of Anze Kopitar and Philip Dano. And you know how important that is in the playoffs? Very, very important, especially when you're facing guys like Draisaitl and McDavid, um, who are the opposing centers. The only thing that kind of worries me a little bit is their penalty kill. That's ranked 24th in the league. I'm not too much
against
of
the
a
best power play
fan.
in the league. They're
Yeah,
playing against the
so
best power play in the league.
that could be like the factor where like bites them in the ass. But but you look at Edmonton, their penalty kill is not the greatest either. 19th in the league, but their face-off percentage not that great, 15th. So LA has the upper hand in that. But of course, power play first, goals first, and that's because you have two generational talents in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So I will be throwing their flowers towards to them because they obviously deserve it. But just a quick look before we end today's video. Look how balanced the team is in terms of points.
Adrian Kempe, man, what a season for that guy. I got it. LA, man, you know what? I know I said Edmonton's gonna win this series, but if Edmonton doesn't win this series and LA ends up going to the second round, I know exactly who I'm cheering for in the playoffs.
Look, they weren't supposed
I'm
to make
yeah,
they
go.
weren't supposed to make the playoffs last year, and they
Yeah.
surprised the whole hockey world. This year, there was expectations that they were gonna make the playoffs once again. There was also people thinking that it was a fluke. Okay, it's a one-time thing, but at a certain point, maybe it was true that it was a one-time thing because their goaltending was killing them. And if it wasn't for Phoenix Copley, their season would have been gone by now. And maybe the
Yeah,
likes of
that's true.
maybe Vancouver or Nashville, Calgary, one of those teams, could have made the playoffs. Maybe you never know. Yeah, anything's possible in the multiverse. But anyways,
LA makes
guys,
some
we
good
like the
moves.
yeah, they made some good moves in my opinion, and I think these two teams are going to battle until the very end, and I'm very
Yeah.
excited to see it. But I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. Who will win this series, the Edmonton Oilers or the LA Kings? Obviously, we'd like to debate with you guys and have an awesome conversation with you guys, throughout the whole playoff series and also the whole playoff, shebang until the Stanley Cup the Stanley Cup um, finals. And it's going to be very exciting. I think this year it's going to be a winner that will surprise us all. I don't think it will be Colorado once again, or maybe Boston gets upset and they're not even the winners, even though they're the favorites. So we'll see what happens, guys. But make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for watching.